Great. I just managed to mix another muddy palette again. This painting will be going in the trash.
Wait, before you waste another precious canvas, don't you want to see if you could use those muddy colors?
How can I use these colors? They're gross.
They might look gross on the palette, but you could still use them to make your painting come alive.
Really? I can do that?
Sure you can. Just stay tuned for another...
So this question, how do I stop mixing muddy colors in gouache, is probably the question that I get most often. But I mean, have you seen my palette? I think it's probably impossible for me not to mix muddy colors in gouache. Now what you just saw is what I paint with on a daily basis, believe it or not. And I don't think my paintings come out muddy. So maybe you're wondering, what's my secret? Well, I don't think my secret is to avoid painting with muddy colors, because to be honest, I love mixing them, or what I endearingly call neutral grays. If you haven't checked out my 3-Minute Thursday about neutral grays, make sure to check it out in the link above. So when thinking about how to answer this question, I thought, why not talk about instead how you can harness your muddy colors to make it work for your painting. Because let's face it, unless you're cleaning your palette every minute or so, which I don't, as you can see, you're probably going to end up with some muddy colors here and there. And it's probably best to learn how to use them to your advantage. Now, I'll be demoing in gouache for this video, but you can take any of these concepts that I'll be talking about and apply it to any medium of your choice, including digital painting. And you know my philosophy. If you know how to mix paints physically, you'll understand how to create stunning color harmonies in your digital paintings so much better. So let's put on the timer for 3 minutes and let's talk about 3 ways you can harness those gross, muddy colors in your painting. Let's start with an awesome quote by James Gurney, which can be found in his book, Color and Light. It says, "There is no such thing as a muddy color. There are only muddy relationships of color." To further hone in on that point, here's another quote from Charles Hawthorne's book on painting that I absolutely love. And it states, "Don't be afraid of mixing your colors. Some of the most beautiful colors found on a canvas are nothing but mud when taken away from their combination." I don't know about you, but muddy colors sounds pretty cool to me. With that enlightening advice, let's dive right in and explore a few ways you can harness those powerful muddy colors and use them in beautiful relationships within your painting. Oftentimes when my painting has too many dark values in my midground and background elements, it can give the impression that my painting can't breathe and is lacking in atmosphere. That can then in turn give the impression that my painting is muddled with too many grays, when the problem isn't the gray color, it's the value of that gray color. Before you push grays completely out of the equation, first check to see if there is a proper balance and contrast in the values of your colors. If you are painting a landscape on a typical sunny day, chances are your midground and background elements are going to slightly decrease in saturation and also gradually get lighter because of atmospheric perspective. If you mix a grayish color that is too dark, that gives the impression that there's no atmospheric depth in your painting, which can feel muddy. Now, if you're finding that your painting is mostly composed of grays or muddy colors, which is totally fine, by the way, if you know how to control your values, like Mr. Edward Seago here, One way to bring excitement and variety into your painting is by mixing a color of full saturation into your grays bit by bit until you shift that gray more towards a specific hue. For an example, if I want to shift my gray towards a warmer color temperature, I might add tiny increments of cadmium red, shifting my gray more towards a warmer reddish gray. Now, because that gray is leaning towards a certain hue, it will harmonize better with the rest of the colors in my painting, which probably also contain bits of the primary color red.
Now here's the trick. Let's say I'm mixing a simple gray from white and black. Don't just take a giant swab of whatever color you want and mix it into your grays. That will oversaturate the color. What I would recommend is incrementally mixing that color out of the tube into your grays to slowly build up saturation. In this case, with such a strong color like cadmium red, it's important to be mindful of how much paint you are scooping up on your brush so you can control your color and make it work for you. I love this painting by Edward Seago titled Summer Morning at Santa Maria della Salute in Venice. Even though at first glance, this painting might not have a lot of color, Seago is ingeniously using a variety of grays of varying saturation to make his painting sing. In the bottom right corner, the gondolas carry accents of a more reddish gray in some areas and a more purplish bluish gray in other areas. The striking architectural silhouette in the back contains grays that are leaning more towards the greens and blues. Now remember, grays are naturally harmonious because they contain a bit of all the other colors you have in your painting already. So even though this painting does not contain a lot of saturated color, it still works because for one, the value structure is strikingly simple and effective. Secondly, Seago shifts his grays delicately towards a variety of hues to infuse subtle color temperature vibration within the piece.
Now, my favorite way to mix grays or muddy colors is by mixing them from complementary colors because I find that that's the best way to get a variety of neutral grays that harmonize with each other for your painting. Now maybe you're thinking, Tiffanie, I do that and my colors still turn out muddy. Control is the key word here. If you are heavy-handed and keep adding too much of one color, you're going to end up compensating by using more paint of the opposing complementary color to balance it out. It takes practice and control to delicately get the amounts of paint that you need without contaminating your mixture and shifting it to a color that doesn't work in your painting.
Here, I'm mixing 3 swatches of the same color, mixed from alizarin crimson, ultramarine, and white to get a nice rich purple color, which is the color I would usually mix when I'm painting a landscape lit in a natural sunlight, because the shadow colors are influenced by that beautiful skylight. However, this color might be too saturated, so I'm going to mix some near complements in to show you how I would desaturate it. First, I'm mixing lemon yellow, which is a complement of purple. Next, I'm going to mix yellow ochre in, which is the color I typically use, to give it a slightly warmer tint to the cooler purple. And third, I'm going to try the earth tone burnt sienna, which I kind of consider an orange and is a complement to blue. As you can see in the second column, I tried my best to influence the original mixture with hints of its warmer complement, but not overwhelm it. Now maybe you're wondering what's happening in the third column. This is a technique I like to call marbleization, where I do not mix all the colors completely together on my palette, therefore creating streaks of more vibrant color in one stroke.
Now at this time, I hope that you've taken away some actionable tips and steps that you can employ to harness those muddy colors in your painting. Now, if there's one last tip I want to share with you, it's to have a balance and variety in your painting. Now, by that, I mean that it's important to have a well-balanced value structure that your painting is built on. And it's important to think about having a balance between your more saturated colors and your neutral grays, because that balance is what will make your painting come alive and vibrate. And by variety, I mean that it's important to have a variety of neutral grays mixed from complements so that your grays don't feel one note, well, muddy. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to hear your progress on how you harness those muddy colors on your palette to make it work for your painting. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel below, and while you have time, don't forget to check out my other videos on gouache and digital painting here. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's 3 Minute Thursday, and I'll catch you in the next one.